everyone, welcome to Lesson 3.1, which is Local and Global Communication in Multicultural Settings. Communication is guided by culture and context. It is predicted by the type of culture dictated by its context. Culture is manifested in our actions and affects how we tell the world who we are and what we believe in. It is also the basis for how we behave in a certain communication context. The context of communication brings a better understanding about culture in general and our own culture in particular. Context was conceptualized by Edward T. Hall, a cultural anthropologist, as anything that refers to the stimuli, environment, or ambience surrounding an event. Our notion of context leads us to be better able to adapt to a multicultural perspective of communication. Local communication is highly grounded on the cultural context. This context of communication reflects the culture of people who are creating their self-identity and community. On the other hand, global communication has turned to be a modifying factor of local communication. It attempts to bring changes that affects communication conventions. The increasing diversity of cultures throughout the world requires the study of intercultural communication. It is a discipline that focuses on how culture affects communication. Intercultural communication concerns on the ability to understand and value cultural differences. It considers the context of communication where people from different cultural backgrounds interact and underscores the wide range of communication process and problems that naturally appear within a social context. And therefore, language is a cultural component that is linked to intercultural understanding. How language is used and its non-verbal forms are decoded based on culture. Hence, enhancing your oral and written communication in an intercultural environment is a way to achieving intercultural competence. Let's move forward to the principles of cooperative conversation. So, local and global communication are kept constant in a multicultural setting. It requires the need to foster cooperative conversation for a successful communication. The norm or convention in communicating should be observed by the communicators regardless of their cultural backgrounds and the required context of oral communication. Culture is considerable and context is recognizable. However, communicators engaging in a cooperative conversation should communicate following Greece principle of cooperative conversation, which states that every communicator engaging in a conversation should follow a set of convention during communication. Failure to recognize Greece's 4 maxims in conversation would mean becoming inefficient and ineffective in any local or global communication. Hence, Greece's principle, which consists of 4 maxims, is presented in this lesson so that all communicators will become observant and sensitive in their role in the communication process. They should be cooperative communicators in the speech context in order to achieve effective communication. So these are the 4 maxims of Greece principle of cooperative conversation. The first is maxim of relation. Every interlocutor, when we say every interlocutor, is the discussant or the person who is having a conversation to another person, should be relevant in conversation. What is this relevance? This relevance is a norm that dictates the need for the interlocutors to become sensitive in the communication process. They need to be relevant in communicating, requiring them to respond based on cultural and contextual requirements. For example, if in a restaurant, a customer asked the server, "Do you have mango juice?" In the local culture, the server usually responds, "Regular or large?" which means that mango juice is available. So the customer needs to place an order according to its size. This is a form of communication that observes economy in talking. There are words to be deleted in order to minimize the time of talking to only one customer, and it will speed up the service to accommodate another customer. If the interlocutors are not relevant in the conversational context, their ignorance to a specific convention in the restaurant may lead to what we call misunderstanding. Next, maxim of quantity. Greece underscores that every interlocutor observe a fair share talk of time. This means that everyone should be given the opportunity to talk. One should not dominate the event. Instead, he or she should give time for others to talk. In the local culture, dominating the conversation gives a negative impression. The presiding officer, the lecturer, a discussant, and a reporter, a resource person, or the speaker is the only recognized person who should dominate the talk. A person who seems to be the speaker of the house is sometimes not appreciated. Some people are not pleased by one who dominates the meeting, lecture, forum, or even in an ordinary day-to-day conversation with groups. Therefore, every interlocutor should be sensitive to time whenever he or she talks. Remember that there are other people in the group who are waiting for their turn to talk. Hence, be brief and give others a chance to talk. Third maxim in the Greece principle of cooperative conversation is the maxim of quality. The truth value of a message is held primary in a conversation, meaning that the accuracy of the message should be upheld. It should not go beyond what is true nor deduced in its essence. This is oftentimes a problem in a local culture. People tend to quarrel or argue with somebody else due to the absence of quality in the interlocutor's message. Every interlocutor should therefore maintain what is true in a given conversation. Do not add nor deduce information. Always maintain a very good reputation whenever you talk. The requirement, therefore, is to manifest honesty in words in order to talk with quality. And the last maxim is the maxim of manner. In the local culture, the manner of saying a word is more regarded than its content. How a person negotiates meaning is very important in conversation. For example, if a speaker is asking if he or she can use multimedia in his or her presentation, "Can I use the multimedia?" The response, "No," may be positive or negative depending on how it was said. No, no, no. People are very sensitive to how we say things. You might hurt other people if you do not know how to tone down your voice. when speaking, or when you become inconsiderate in communication. Likewise, this maxim indicates one to be clear in speaking. Clarity of speech should be observed so that you will not be misinterpreted. This should be observed in various contexts. So those were the 4 Greece principle of cooperative conversation, meaning that these 4 maxims are the things that you should remember when you are having a conversation to a person or to a certain person. It is with the same culture or in different culture. Let's move forward to the modes of communication. Words and gestures are used in a particular region or country to give meaning to certain ideas. Words are primary in communication, but gestures would even make a meaningful communication. Let's look at the modes of communication that is being indicated below. In an intercultural communication. The first is words, greetings, and expressions used in intercultural communication and body language used in intercultural communication. Words, greetings, and expressions should used in intercultural communication. So language is linked to intercultural understanding. Words, greetings, and expressions are used based on culture and context. Likewise, expression abound and are language specific. Like for example, how do we say take care in different languages? In Filipino, we say ingat. In Kapampangan, we say mimingat. We have also Ilocos, agannad ka, and other different languages. Okay? So, you may see it here in the example. Next. What are the common words, greetings, and expressions that are being expressed in 4 languages? So, like for example, the word hello. We say it in French as bonjour, Spanish as hola, hola, Korean in annyeong, and Mandarin Chinese in ni hao. We have also thank you in English. When we say it in French, it is merci. In Spanish, gracias. Korean is gomawo. And Mandarin or Chinese is shishini. And other different languages, as you can see here. So, I will just mention a few. So, you'll just have to mention it in your own. Okay, and see it here in the example. So let's move forward. Okay, the second mode of communication is body language used in intercultural communication. So body language is a form of non-verbal communication in which visible body language communicates particular messages, either in place of or in conjunction with speech. It has always been part of communication. However, its meaning may vary from one culture to another. In a multicultural context of communication, you should be culturally sensitive to the differences of this body language. You might fail to communicate effectively if its rules and norms of communication are abandoned. Effective communication, therefore, would require the communicator appropriate knowledge of the cultural use of body language in a multicultural settings. So below or the next slides are sets of common body languages that manifested in multicultural setting. The first is the shaking hands. In the Philippines and in America, the cultural gesture of shaking hands upon greeting is considered the norm when doing a person-to-person introduction. In fact, to refuse a handshake is considered a very rude gesture. In Saudi Arabia, you can shake a man's hand after meeting him, but you can never shake hands to a woman's hand at all in a greeting. Next is a okay sign. The OK hand gesture in America and England is quite popular and considered a general gesture that denotes an agreement of sentiment. However, this gesture in Brazil is the equivalent of using your middle finger or as a gesture in America. Likewise, the OK hand gesture is taken as an insult in most Latin American countries, Austria, and France. Thumbs up. The thumbs up gesture can be an equivalent to the OK gesture and is widely used within America, England, and even in the Philippines. Once again, in a large amount of cultures around the globe, giving a thumbs up gesture is a very large insult. In the Americas, excluding the United States, thumbs up is a horrible idea. Using this gesture can be denoted as a sexual insult and correlates to the middle finger meaning in the United States. Sitting in cross legs. Sitting with cross legs is common in North America and European countries, but it is considered disrespectful in Asia and the Middle East, whereas straight and balanced posture prevails as a norm. Eye contact. It is when speaking to someone, eye contact is considered a positive aspect of body language in the Philippines. It is also common in Spain and the Arabic culture, which is, in Arabic culture, it should be among people of the same sex. It is not looking back when someone is looking at you is considered disrespectful and demonstrate insecurity, lack of interest, or indicates deception. Nodding the head. For Filipinos, head nod up and down generally means agreement, approval, or yes, while head nod from side to side or head shake means the reverse. However, Bulgarians and Greeks, for example, are known for their unusual manner of saying yes and no. Nodding up and down indicates a negative response. Tagging the earlobes. The Portuguese tag their earlobes to indicate tasty food. The Spaniards to signify that someone is not paying their drinks, but in Italy, to insinuate sexual innuendos. Pointing using the lips. In some culture, like Filipino, Native American, Puerto Rican, and many Latin American cultures, people use their lips to point instead of a finger. In the West, people often kiss when they meet or when they say goodbye. In many Asian countries, it is considered too intimate of an action to be displayed in public. And last, broad arm movement. Many cultures use their arms freely, as in Italy or the US, where they often wave their arms around when talking. However, Northern Europeans find it hard to tolerate gesturing with the arms. It is associated with insincerity and over-dramatization. In Japan, gesturing with broad arm movements is considered impolite. Let's move forward to the ABCs of intercultural communication. Communication is complex because of the cultural and contextual factors embedded in it. It is also challenging due to the many ways in which communication can vary between cultures, as well as individuals plus the requirements needed by an individual to satisfy the conversational conventions. Although, effective communication is difficult to achieve because of these considerations, good communication is attainable. According to Lewis in 2008, it provided the following ABCs of intercultural communication, which are acknowledge, be level, and clarify. Acknowledge. Differences in communication style should be acknowledged. Every person in a group has a particular communication style which gives her his own identity in communicating. Anticipating awareness on differences will increase awareness of uniqueness. B level. Communication does not only uphold speaking and listening, but also require a holistic process that includes verbal and nonverbal channels. Nonverbal communication is critical in the communication process due to its cultural nuances. It may vary from one culture to another. And C. Clarify. If you are doubtful of your understanding about what is being communicated, ask for clarification, most especially if you do not understand what he or she is talking about. Devote a little extra time to verify understanding so that you can save time and avoid frustration. Next, cultural communication barriers. Sometimes, the goal of communication is not achieved due to communication barriers brought by culture. These barriers obviously give difficulty in understanding people whose language is different and evidently challenge people who are trying to work harmoniously with others of a different background. And because of this, people from different parts of the world may display different emotions and behaviors due to their varying frame of reference. Hence, there are cultural barriers to communication in the multicultural settings. The first is the language barrier. Language is evidently the primary barrier of communication in second and foreign language contexts. Because of its complexity, communication between people speaking different language is difficult. Even people from the same country, but with different mother tongue and cultural backgrounds, can find it tricky to convey complex emotions and concepts, which can lead to misunderstanding. The unifying force of these people is their national language, although sometimes others even struggle to use it due to orthographic and phonological differences. Just like in the Philippines, what is our national language? It's Tagalog, it's Filipino. Okay? So even in our country, we cannot understand each other simply because we have many different languages in our country. So language barrier is one of those barriers in communication. Next is hostile stereotypes. Stereotypes are generalizations or assumptions people make about the characteristic of members of a group based on an image about what people in that group are like. Oftentimes, this image is wrong and leads to prejudging an individual who is taught to process characteristics that are ascribed to the group. In a training program of the University of Colorado, it was elaborated that stereotypes reveal Americans who are generally considered to be friendly, generous, and tolerant, but also arrogant, impatient, and domineering. Conversely, Asians were expected to be shrewd and alert, but reserved. Clearly, not all Americans are friendly and generous, and not all Asians are shrewd. If you assume you know what a person is like and do not look at each person as an individual, you are likely to make errors in your estimates of a person's character. Hence, hostile stereotypes lead to misconceptions and barriers to communication. Behavior differences. Differences of behavior between employees of different cultures can cause misunderstandings. Every culture has its norm about what is regarded as appropriate behavior. In the corporate culture, Americans found always proper to ask many questions if they do not understand something. They are not ashamed to admit what they do not know. They assume you understand something if you do not tell them. This is also held true to other cultures. However, there are times when people from other cultures do not give a specific meaning of their being inquisitive. There are people who ask questions for them to be enlightened, but some ask questions, especially in lectures and for a certain discussion in order to test the ability of the lecturer or to stand out and be recognized by the group. Likewise, in some cultures, handshakes are usually brief. Light handshakes are considered distasteful, So a firm grip is the norm. While in other cultures, handshakes take longer, light, and accompanied with eye contact or a grip on the shoulder. These behavior differences can hamper effective communication if they are not recognized. And the last, emotional display. Different cultures have varying regard on emotional display. What is considered appropriate display of emotion in one culture may not be appropriate in another culture. For example, some cultures consider displaying fear, weakness, frustration, and anger inappropriate in a certain business setting. People from this culture tend to hide their emotion and talk only about the factual or objective aspect of the situation. In other cultures, emotional display is expected among participants, and sometimes they become outrageous or they display strong emotion during meetings, which leads to misunderstanding and tends to antagonize other participants. Hence, this negative emotional display should be avoided. So this, my friends, ends our lesson 3.